You know that feeling when you're scrolling through social media and you see someone your age, maybe even someone you went to college with, posting pictures from their second vacation this year, or talking about the house they just bought, or casually mentioning they're maxing out their retirement accounts? And you're sitting there thinking, wait, how? We're the same age. We started at roughly the same place. What happened? It's this weird, uncomfortable moment where you're happy for them, obviously, but also you're doing the math in your head. You're working hard, you're not being reckless with money, you pay your bills, so why does it feel like you're running in place while other people are somehow accumulating wealth and building this cushion of financial security that seems completely out of reach? Here's the thing, and this is something I think about constantly. My name is Tim, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. And what I've come to realize is that the gap you're seeing, that distance between where you are and where those other people are, it wasn't created overnight. It wasn't some lottery win or inheritance, though sure, that happens sometimes. Most of the time, it was created in their 30s. Your 30s are this strange, pivotal decade. You're not young enough to make the same mistakes you made in your 20s without consequence, but you're not old enough to feel like it's too late to course correct. You're right in the middle. And that middle ground, that's where your financial future gets decided. Not determined, decided. Because you still have agency here. You still have choices. But the window for those choices to compound into something meaningful is narrowing every single year. By the end of this, I want you to understand why your 30s matter so much financially, what most people get wrong during this decade, and honestly, most importantly, what you can do right now, today, to make sure you're on the right side of that wealth gap 10 years from down the road. Let's start with the most obvious thing that nobody really talks about in practical terms: compound interest. Yeah, you've heard this before. Start early, let your money grow, exponential curves, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I mean when I say your 30s are the compound interest window closing. Imagine two people. Person A starts investing $500 a month at age 25. Person B waits until they're 35 and invests the same $500 a month. Both invest until they're 65. Same amount of money going in every month, same rate of return, let's say 7% annually, which is pretty reasonable for a diversified portfolio over the long term. Person A, who started at 25, ends up with around $1.2 million by retirement. Person B, who started at 35, ends up with about $550,000. That 10-year head start, it's worth over $600,000. That's not a typo. That's the power of time. Now, if you're in your 30s and you're thinking, well, I'm already person B, so I guess I'm screwed, hold on. That's not the point. The point is that you're at the exact moment where every single year you delay has massive consequences. If person B waited until 40 instead of 35, they'd end up with around $365,000. Another 5 years of delay costs them nearly $200,000. Your 30s are the last decade where time is still overwhelmingly on your side. You've got 25 to 35 years until retirement, depending on when you plan to stop working. That's enough runway for compound interest to do something genuinely transformative. But once you hit your 40s, the math starts getting brutal. You can still build wealth, absolutely, but you're fighting against the clock in a way that people in their 30s simply aren't yet. And here's the kicker. Most people in their 30s are still living like they're in their 20s, at least financially. They're still in the "I'll start saving seriously next year" mindset. They're still treating retirement accounts like some abstract concept that doesn't apply to them yet. Meanwhile, the people who figured this out early, they're quietly building wealth in the background, and the gap just keeps widening.
There's this concept in behavioral economics called lifestyle creep, and basically it means that as your income goes up, your spending goes up to match it. You get a raise, you upgrade your apartment. You get a promotion, suddenly you're eating out more, buying nicer clothes, maybe leasing a nicer car. It feels like you're just enjoying the fruits of your labor, right? You worked hard, you deserve it. And honestly, you do deserve it. That's not the issue. The issue is that once you lock in a certain lifestyle, it becomes incredibly difficult to scale it back down. Your brain gets used to a certain standard of living, and anything less than that feels like deprivation. Your 30s are when this lifestyle solidification happens. In your 20s, you were probably broke, or at least broke-ish. You had roommates, you ate ramen, you drove a car that was held together by duct tape and hope. But in your 30s, you're making real money now. You've got a career, not just a job. And suddenly there's all this pressure, external and internal, to live like a successful adult. The problem is, if you let your lifestyle inflate to match your income, you never actually get ahead. You're making $80,000 instead of $40,000, sure, but if you're also spending $80,000 instead of $40,000, you're in the exact same financial position you were before. You're just doing it in a nicer apartment. I know a guy, let's call him Marcus, who got a big promotion at 32, went from making $65,000 to $95,000. Amazing, right? First thing he did was move into a luxury apartment downtown, started going to nicer restaurants, bought a brand new car, upgraded everything, and he felt good about it because he'd earned it. Fast forward 5 years, he's 37, making $110,000 now, and he has less in savings than he did when he was making $65,000, because every time his income went up, his spending went up faster. The people who build serious wealth in their 30s, they don't let this happen. They consciously keep their lifestyle below their income and they bank the difference. Not in a miserly, depressing way where they never enjoy anything, but in a strategic way. They realize that the gap between what you earn and what you spend is where wealth is created. And here's the thing, once you solidify a high-cost lifestyle, it's not just hard to cut back, it's emotionally painful. You feel like you're moving backward, you feel like you're failing. So people just don't. They stay trapped in this cycle where they make good money but never accumulate any, because every dollar that comes in goes right back out. Your 30s are your last chance to set a sustainable lifestyle before it sets you. Let's talk about career trajectory for a second. For most people, the biggest jumps in income happen in your 30s and early 40s. You're transitioning from junior roles to mid-level, from mid-level to senior. You're building expertise, getting promotions, maybe switching companies for better offers. This is the decade where your earning potential really starts to unlock. But here's what I see happen all the time. People treat these income increases like windfalls, like bonuses. They celebrate with bigger purchases, more expensive habits, lifestyle upgrades. And I get it, you worked hard for that raise, you should enjoy it. But if you're not capturing at least some of that increase and redirecting it toward wealth building, you're basically running on a treadmill. You're working harder, earning more, but not actually getting ahead. There's this old piece of advice that says every time you get a raise, you should increase your retirement contributions by at least half of that raise. So if you get a $10,000 raise, put an extra $5,000 a year into your 401k. You still get to enjoy the other $5,000 so it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing, but you're also locking in real wealth accumulation. The problem is, most people do the opposite. They take the entire raise and fold it into their lifestyle, and then 5 years later, they look at their net worth and think, how am I not further along? I've been making good money for years. The answer is because you've been spending good money for years too. Your peak earning years, which for most people are your late 30s through your 50s, are not just about enjoying a higher income. They're about converting that income into assets, into investments, into things that will generate wealth for you even after you stop working. And the earlier you start doing this in your 30s, the more those assets have time to grow. Wait until your 40s and you're playing catch-up. Wait until your 50s and honestly, you're in survival mode, trying to jam 30 years of saving into 15. Here's something nobody tells you about your 30s. This is when life starts throwing expensive curveballs at you. And I'm not talking about fun expensive, like trips to Europe or fancy dinners. I'm talking about kids, weddings, aging parents, medical issues, home repairs, all the stuff that costs serious money and just kind of happens. In your 20s, you could mostly wing it financially because your obligations were low. Rent, food, student loans maybe, but that was basically it. You had flexibility. You could move for a job, pick up a side hustle, crash on a friend's couch if you needed to. Your 30s, not so much. If you have kids or you're thinking about having kids, you already know this is expensive. Childcare alone can run $15,000 to $30,000 a year depending on where you live. And that's just the beginning. There's diapers, formula, clothes they grow out of every 3 months, doctor's visits, school expenses, activities. It adds up so fast it'll make your head spin. And then there's the stuff you don't see coming. Your car dies and you need a new one. Your roof starts leaking. Your parents need financial help. You or your partner have a health issue that insurance doesn't fully cover. If you spent your early 30s living paycheck to paycheck, upgrading your lifestyle every time you got a raise, when these curveballs come, and they will come, you're going to be in crisis mode. You'll be racking up credit card debt, pulling from retirement accounts, scrambling. But if you spent your early 30s building an emergency fund, keeping your lifestyle in check, and investing consistently, you can handle these things. Not easily, necessarily, but without derailing your entire financial life. I know this couple I know. They're both in their mid-30s, 2 kids, good jobs. A few years ago, the husband got laid off, just boom, out of nowhere. They were terrified, obviously, but because they'd been saving aggressively and had a solid emergency fund, they made it through 6 months of unemployment without going into debt. He found a new job, they're fine now, but if they hadn't built that cushion earlier in their 30s, that layoff could have destroyed them financially. Your 30s are when you need to build resilience into your financial life, because life is coming for you, and it's springing a bill.
Let's talk about the big financial decisions that typically happen in your 30s. Buying a house, having kids, maybe getting married, or if you got married young, staying married and merging your financial lives more seriously. These are all huge, life-altering decisions, and they all have massive financial implications. And here's the thing, the decisions you make around these milestones will echo for decades. Take buying a house. I've seen people in their early 30s stretched by the absolute maximum house they can qualify for because they want to get into the market, or because they think real estate always goes up, or because they're comparing themselves to their friends. And then they're house poor for a decade. Every extra dollar goes to the mortgage. They can't save for retirement. They can't invest. They're stuck. On the flip side, I know people who bought less house than they could afford, kept their mortgage payment reasonable, and used the extra cash flow to invest aggressively in their retirement accounts and taxable brokerage accounts. 10 years later, their net worth is wildly higher, even though their house is smaller. The same logic applies to kids. Kids are expensive, yes, but the choices you make around how you raise them, private school versus public, how many activities you enroll them in, how much you spend on stuff they don't actually need, these choices compound over time. You don't have to deprive your kids, that's not what I'm saying, but you do have to be intentional. Because it's very easy to fall into the trap of spending everything you make on your kids in the name of giving them the best, and then waking up at 50 with nothing saved for retirement, which, ironically, is one of the worst things you can do for your kids long term. Your 30s are when these major life decisions happen, and the way you handle them will determine whether you're building wealth or just treading water. Okay, let's get specific about retirement accounts for a second, because this is where a lot of people lose the game without even realizing they're playing. If you start contributing to a 401k or IRA in your early 30s and you do it consistently, even if it's not a huge amount, you'll likely be fine in retirement. Maybe not rich, but fine, comfortable. But if you wait until your late 30s or early 40s, you're going to have to contribute significantly more to catch up, and most people don't. They just keep contributing the same modest amount and then act surprised when they're 60 and realize they don't have nearly enough. If you're not on that track, you're falling behind, and the further behind you fall, the harder it is to catch up because you're fighting against time and math. The good news? If you're in your early or mid-30s, you can still course correct. You can start contributing more. You can take advantage of employer matches. You can open an IRA if you don't have access to a 401k. You can automate your contributions so you're not relying on willpower, but you have to start. Like, actually start. Not plan to start. Not, I'll do it after I pay off this debt or once I get my next raise.
now. Because every year you wait, the amount you'll need to contribute to hit your retirement goals goes up. It's just math. And at some point, usually in your mid-40s, the math becomes almost impossible for most people. I want to touch on something that I see all the time in the personal finance world, the obsession with side hustles. You're told that if you just start a side hustle, you can make extra money and accelerate your wealth building. And look, for some people, that works. If you've got a skill that's marketable, if you've got the time and energy, if you can build something scalable, great, go for it. But for most people in their 30s, especially if you've got a demanding job and maybe kids and other obligations, the side hustle thing is a distraction. You end up burning yourself out trying to squeeze an extra $500 or $1,000 a month out of evenings and weekends, and meanwhile, you're neglecting the things that actually matter: advancing your career, investing consistently, managing your spending. Here's what I think works better for most people. Focus on increasing your primary income. Get better at your job. Build skills that make you more valuable. Network. Switch companies if you need to. Negotiate raises. Your full-time career is almost always going to have more earning potential than a side hustle, and it's a lot more sustainable. And then, once you're earning more in your main career, be disciplined about saving and investing that extra income instead of spending it.
Let's talk about something uncomfortable: the role that social comparison plays in your financial decisions. Your 30s are when you're most vulnerable to this, because everyone around you is hitting different milestones at different times. Some of your friends are buying houses, some are having kids, some are taking amazing vacations, some are driving new cars. And it's so easy to look at what everyone else is doing and think, I should be doing that too. But here's the reality. You have no idea what anyone else's financial situation actually is. That friend who just bought a $600,000 house, maybe they had help from their parents with the down payment. The point is, you can't build your financial life based on what other people appear to be doing. You have to build it based on your goals, your values, your situation. And I know that's easier said than done because we're social creatures and we're wired to compare ourselves to others. But if you let social comparison drive your spending, you will never build wealth. A longer game, a game where the goal isn't to look successful, but to actually be financially secure. Okay, so after all of this, what should you actually do? Let me give you some concrete steps. First, automate your savings. Set up automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings and investment accounts. If you don't see the money, you won't spend it. This is the single most effective wealth-building strategy for most people. Second, live below your means. I know, you've heard this a million times, but it's true. Find a lifestyle you can sustain comfortably that's below your income and bank the difference. If you make $80,000, try to live on $60,000 and invest the rest. Third, max out your retirement contributions if you can. At a minimum, contribute enough to get your full employer match. That's free money. If you can do more, do more. Fourth, build an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. This is your buffer against life's curveballs. Fifth, pay off high-interest debt. Credit card debt, personal loans, anything above 7% interest. That stuff is killing your ability to build wealth. Sixth, invest in yourself. Take courses, build skills, network. Your earning potential is your most valuable asset, and you should be constantly working to increase it. And finally, get clear on your goals. What does financial security actually mean to you? What are you building toward? When you have clarity on that, it's a lot easier to make smart financial decisions because you know what you're working for. Here's the thing about your 30s. They're not magic. You don't turn 30 and suddenly have all your financial problems solved. You don't turn 40 and automatically become wealthy. But your 30s are the decade where the decisions you make compound into your future reality. They're the decade where you either start building real wealth or you lock in another 10, 20, 30 years of financial stress. But then you wake up at 40, and if you did the boring, consistent things in your 30s, you're in a completely different financial position than your peers who didn't. You've got a cushion, you've got options, you've got momentum. And if you didn't do those things, you're starting to panic because you can see retirement getting closer and you don't have much to show for all the years you've been working. Your 30s decide your financial future not because they're deterministic, but because they're the last decade where time is overwhelmingly on your side, where small decisions compound into big outcomes, where you can still course correct without it being a heroic effort. So if you're in your 30s right now, or if you're about to enter your 30s, I just want you to sit with that for a second. You're at an inflection point. The choices you make in the next few years will ripple forward for decades. And that's not meant to stress you out. It's meant to wake you up. Because you still have time. You still have agency. You can still build something meaningful. But you have to start. And you have to be consistent. And honestly, 10 years from now, you'll be so glad you did.